famous French born and raised Grandmaster Alireza Firouzja has just made his way to the candidates. As you remember, Alireza was already prophesied to become a world challenger back in 2022 in Madrid, where he played his first candidates. Unfortunately, back at the time, he got stopped and distracted by my fellow friend and colleague Danya in 250 hybrid bullet chess match at 5 a.m. in the morning.
Just like all eyes were on a certain bullet match last night between Danya and Alireza.
So this year there was no excuse for Alireza. It turned out that by December 2023, Alireza was still behind his competitors Wesley So and Anishgiri. Therefore, he had to gain more rating. The first stop was the senior living community in Chartres, south of Paris. A double round-robin tournament where Alireza beat everyone but Sergei Fedorchuk, another friend of mine. The last game ended in a draw and Alireza lost rating again. There was no time to lose and Alireza took another challenge. 2 players round-robin versus Magnus Carlsen, former coach and second Grandmaster Laurent Fressinet. It was Anishgiri who stopped this circus from happening. He complained on Twitter, and FIDE stopped the event from happening. Well, fair enough. 2-person round-robin sounds suspicious. Then our desperate future world champion had to cancel his plans of participation in the FIDE World Rapid and Blitz. He did miss a lot. And instead registered for the Village Open de Rouen in Normandy, France, 7-round Swiss. Sounds like a dream come true. First round, Alireza faced a 1600 rated player, which makes it over 1000 rating difference. Alireza's current rating is 2763. So this is Philippe Adrieaux, a 73-year-old chess enthusiast who just randomly got paired against a super GM. In this video, I'm gonna show you how a chess master beats a beginner, or in our case, a chess grandmaster, super grandmaster beats an advanced beginner. Here we go. Adrieaux Philippe versus Firouzja Alireza. White started with knight f3. Ready opening. d5, c4, d4, b4, c5. So far, we're in the theory. Here, white makes the first mistake. Captures the pawn on c5. It is not great because black wants to put their knight on c6, then to prepare e5 and, to control the center. If white does the theoretical move g3, for example, then after knight c6 there is b5. The knight is attacked and e5 is no longer possible. So by leaving the pawn on b4, white keeps the pressure. B takes c5 is falling into black's needs. Knight c6, g3, e5. And just as I told you, white already is not doing great because they don't have a center. And just as you know, center is the most important part of the chessboard. d3, bishop c5, bishop g2, knight f6. Short castle, short castle. Another mistake by white. Bishop g5. I don't like this move. Why? Because the bishop belongs to either a3 or actually to a3. Bishop a3 would have been better because c5 is an important square and white needs to take care of that. Plus, we provoke the exchange. If bishop takes a3, knight takes f3, white has the control of the b5, which is pretty important. And after bishop f5, for example, finishing the development, here the position is equal. Instead, white goes bishop g5. You have to understand this is a very typical mistake for beginners. Beginners tend to make trades, when it's necessary or not. Here the trades are not necessary. A beginner mindset is, hey, I just made a pin. Big deal. I just attack your bishop. What you gonna do? Beginner's gonna say, but I trade. Isn't that cool? More trades closer to the draw? No, you're gonna lose because now the position is open and black has an advantage of 2 bishops. 2 bishops are always important. You know that famous saying, a bad bishop is better than a good knight?
Never heard of it.
Well, it's not true, but you got the point. Knight d2, queen e7, preparing f5 and e5, taking the center. Knight e4, an outpost? Hell no, the knight is gonna get kicked out. Bishop b4, this is actually an outpost. Because the open file is here, the a5 is gonna support the bishop, a3 is not possible anytime soon, and how are you gonna kick the bishop? Plus, it controls the e1 important square for the rook. The bishop could go to c3, another real outpost, for whatever it's worth. Rook b1, very scary. a5, protecting the bishop. Knight e1, well, this move actually looks pretty decent, because the knight wants to go to c2 and then kind of trade the strongest piece of black. But it's too slow. Bishop g4, the real pin actually. Not dangerous, but we develop the pieces, and a master, in this case Grandmaster, shows you that development is important even when you're 2700. Knight c2, scary. No. f5, attacking the knight. If white decides to take the bishop, knight takes b4, then a takes b4, the knight on e4 is attacked and the pawn on a2 is falling down. Knight e2, back passive, e4. We don't give a hack about our bishop, because if you take it, then I take with a pawn, and the rook is coming to a2. The a file is getting open for the rook. This is another important concept if you're learning the game. Never open your opponent's rooks. My Russian coach used to say, it's not just about trades, it's about what pieces are left on the board after the trades. It is true that here I told you bishops are stronger than knights, so you would have thought, but trading knight over the bishop is good for me. Maybe, but what is after? You open the opponent's rook, the a2 pawn's gonna fall, the rook is gonna enter to the second range, and you know already by now that second and seventh ranges are the strongest places for the rook. In Russian we say обжорный ряд, which means stomach paradise or something like that. Sounds lame. You translate in the comments down below. And speaking of the comments, don't forget to put the like and subscribe if you want to get better at chess. D takes e4 because the pawn was attacked. Yes, that's true. e4 pawn wanted to take on d3 and the e2 pawn would not be able to capture because I told you, remember the pin. d3 takes e4, rook takes a2, intermediate move, or they also say intermezzo. Now, the e4 pawn is pinned and cannot capture again because, once again, the e2 would fall and then it would lead to some material disadvantage. h3, attacking the bishop, big deal. Bishop a4, bishop f3. This is actually wise. White is trying to trade black's strongest piece and they have all the right to do so. Unfortunately, it's not what's gonna save them. Bishop takes f3, e takes f3, and now the rook is extremely strong. The second file is even wider. The second file is wider than ever. Now, it's a very critical moment. The position for black is already winning. There are tons of different ways. For instance, black can play knight e5, and it's about a game over, because there is a threat rook takes d2, and if queen takes d2, then knight f3 check, and attacking the queen, which is a double attack, which is also a fork, which would cause a loss for white. If you say, but I defend, king g2, well, it doesn't help you because f takes e4, and let's say f takes e4, I just play d3, and I look at you, and I tell you, it's time to resign. Knight a5. Oh my lands. A super grandmaster, Alireza Firouzja, has relaxed too early. The guy thought Philippe was too easy, but in fact he wasn't. Knight a5 throws all the advantage to the garbage bin, just like that. Boom! Here the right move would have been e takes f5, and after rook takes f5, knight b3, knight takes c4, queen d3, and surprisingly, white has defended everything. Anyone wants to grab the pawn on d4, why not? Our boy Firouzja was lucky enough because white did not play in the best way. Instead, Philippe has played king g2, which is a dubious move. Followed by f4, Firouzja shows us his positional understanding. Rook c1, not a fan. Rooks belong to open file, and once again, when you see the strongest piece of your opponent's camp, that's right, I highlighted, it's the rook on a2, you gotta change it. Kick it or change it. It's like when there is a robber coming into your house, what you gonna do? You're gonna kick him out, right? So either trade or just boom. You got it? Good. Rook a1, rook takes a1, queen a1, whatever. Like, why would have hold it still? Rook c1 does look ugly. Plus, it's putting the rook in front of your own pawn, which was already defended. So what's the point? The rook was in front of the pawn, now the rook is in front of the other pawn. Never put your rook in front of the pawn. Always put your rook on the open file. Oh, sounds like a good idea for another Russian school of chess, if you're following those on YouTube Shorts. d3. Now, my friends, this is a passer. It's also an outpost, to be honest, because it's just a pawn which is way too deep into the opponent's territory. c5. I'm an independent woman. Queen a6. Oh yeah? Show me. g4. I protect my king. Everything is blocked. Really? What about the dark files? Rook d8. Actually, forget about the dark files. I have a passer. So this is gonna be a queen. You know, the promotion, the pawn goes up or down all the way through and becomes a queen. Or any other piece, but I do recommend you to promote to a queen. Rook b1. Interesting. Wait a second. Hasn't the rook been already on b1, b4? Too soon. Rook c2. This is showing the class. When you have something in the second rank or in the seventh rank into your opponent's territory, if it's a rook, think about how to double it. In this case, we're bringing the queen exactly here to a2, and we want to double our forces on the second rank. Did I call the rank a file? You got me, I'm an immigrant. What can you do? Rook b4, queen a2, exactly. Knight b3. Here comes the most beautiful moment of the game. Frankly speaking, my favorite one. Here, Alireza could already take a piece, knight takes b3. But instead, the guy wanted to play the beauty prize and put his knight on c4, threatening knight e3. Another, you got it, fork to the king and to the queen. The only option is to sacrifice exchange, rook takes c4, rook takes c4. Now, technically, this is better for white than to leave the knight just alone, because rook is 5, knight is 3, so now white just lost 2 pawns instead of losing the knight, remember? Here, knight takes b3 would have been worse for white, mathematically and statistically, because it's simply mathematics and statistics. But the reality is, after knight c4, rook takes c4, and rook takes c4, the white knight on b3 is still trapped. The last few moves showed white's unsuccessful attempts to save the knight. e5, rook c2, knight c1, queen c4. Total domination. This is how I call it. The knight has absolutely no square. e6. Where are you going, girl? Where are you going? You want a queen? I think I need to remind you who I am. I'm the daughter of Mikhail Tal and granddaughter of Alexander Shabalov. Oh, wait a minute. It wasn't my game. Queen takes e6, played Alireza. Knight takes d3, queen c4 back. Tricky moment. If rook takes d3, then it doesn't work. Knight takes d3, last attempt. Queen c4, the knight is pinned, and Philippe Adrieaux had to resign. This was the round 1 of Open de Rouen, where Alireza Firouzja faced an opponent of 1000 rating difference. Now, on a serious note, this is actually pretty cool. How would you feel if you were facing an opponent of 1000 rating more? Must be a thrilling experience.